Hello, good evening, viewers, and welcome to Let's Talk About. Let's Talk About is a real understanding of social issues that borders us as Christians. You are welcome to this week's edition. Today we are discussing newborn jaundice and all you need to know about it. Joining me for the discussion today, we have very important specialists. First of all, we have Dr. Ejewa Bonuedi, who is a pediatrician specialist, Dr. Josephine Kunedu, who is a medical officer, and Mrs. Juliet Menu, who is a senior nursing officer, all from the University of Ghana. My name is Edinam Ejesika, and I'll be your host for today. Remember that you can join us live on all our social media platforms, both Facebook and YouTube. Don't forget to send us your comments, your questions, and all the contributions that you want to make towards this discussion. You can also send us a WhatsApp on 0501 5799996. We would love to hear from you. Welcome, doctors and nurse, to today's edition of Let's Talk About.
Thank you, Edinam. We're happy to be here.
Great. I can see you are, almost all of you, okay, so everybody has something to do with the Yellow Month, which was last month. Exactly. So today we are going to talk about something that is very important to all mothers and should be of concern to the nation as a whole.
And fathers.
And fathers, it's true. Let's not leave them out of the discussion.
Exactly.
So today we are going to be talking about newborn jaundice. Okay, so I'm going to start with you, Dr. Ejewa, if you don't mind me calling you that.
That's fine.
All right, so what is newborn jaundice?
All right, so we say newborn period is between the first 28 days of life in any human being. So newborn jaundice simply means jaundice that occurs within the first 28 days of life or the first month of a baby's life.
Okay.
And this could be brought up by different causes.
Okay.
And depending on the causes, the treatments vary. But the whole idea is for us to identify jaundice and treat it. When we talk about jaundice, it looks like it's a big word.
Yeah.
All we want to say is the yellowish discoloration of the eye and the skin.
Okay.
And that can be seen by our naked eyes.
Okay.
We don't need any special gadgets or machines to detect jaundice.
Okay.
By my naked eyes, by your naked eyes, even as a layperson, you can't see jaundice in a newborn.
Good. So even though we are talking about a newborn jaundice, just because you are mentioning jaundice, before I go on with our discussion, I would want you to let us know if what really distinguishes what we are calling the newborn jaundice with any other kind of jaundice. If it exists, is there adults, just because you're saying newborn? Just before we dip down into the real discussion, is there...
So jaundice is generally the term for the yellowing of the eye and the skin. So just as you mentioned, newborns can have jaundice and adults can also have jaundice. And most of the time, the causes may be similar. But then for the newborn particularly, we are worried about the jaundice that starts in the first day, within the first day of life. And some of the causes, the reason why you would have that yellowing is the breakdown of the red blood cells, which the product is left in the blood, builds up in the blood, and then that's what gives the yellowish pigmentation. So for adults as well, you would have some jaundice caused by breakdown of the red blood cells. And then for adults as well, you could have surgical causes where there's a buildup of the other form of the yellowing, which is not broken down.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
And babies can also have the surgical kind of jaundice as well.
Okay, good. So now we know that we are now going to delve more into the newborn jaundice. So back to you, Doc, again. With the newborn jaundice, is it one kind of jaundice? Or even within its being a newborn, there are different kinds or different types of jaundice?
Yes, so jaundice, like we said, is the yellowish pigmentation, but there are two types. There's what we call the conjugated type and the unconjugated type.
Okay.
So unconjugated simply is free bilirubin. Bilirubin is the yellow pigmentation floating in the blood, causing the jaundice. And then you have another type that is bilirubin that has already been broken down, but which the body cannot get rid of, and that is the conjugated type. So we know that most of the jaundice that affects newborns is the unconjugated type.
Okay.
And however, apart from that, we do have the conjugated type, and those are usually caused by infections and surgical causes. So for instance, you may have a baby who can become jaundiced maybe in the second week of life.
Okay.
And then you would realize things like the baby has what we call pale or chalky stools.
Okay.
We know newborns typically have beautiful golden colored stools.
Such a nice description.
Nice description for poo, right?
Yeah.
So, however, with these babies, you realize that it looks clayey or it looks whitish.
Okay.
And they typically are the ones who have surgical causes of jaundice. So you would have things like the doctors will say biliary atresia or other big terminologies.
Okay.
But what we do know is that for those ones, they basically require surgical intervention. And we do have pediatric surgeons as well who tackle this in the newborns.
Okay.
For us, it is so important because this type of jaundice needs to be identified within the first month, maximum 6 weeks, and treatment done. Otherwise, it leads them to long-term complications.
Okay. So let me come to our mommy nurse here, okay? So let's assume that usually if everything goes right with you at the hospital as a mother, you've had your baby, all the tests have been run, you've been discharged maybe in the 48 to 72 hours. And then we get home with the child. What should we look out for? Because like you just mentioned, you are targeting like a period of 1 month. So what should we look out for once we take the baby home? What can the mother visibly see that should cause her to want to go back to the hospital?
Thank you. Normally, when they are being discharged, what we do tell them is, when you go home, don't just put your baby in the room, as most mothers would do.
Okay.
Don't close your doors, and then dim the lights. The light should be bright. But for you to be able to really see a baby who is jaundiced, you have to please bring the baby outside.
Okay.
Or open your doors and then your windows with daylight in the room. And then that's when you can really see the jaundice. So you first, with your thumb, you just press the forehead and then see.
Okay.
As you press and then you release, you could see that there could be some yellowish pigmentations. And then it starts from the head.
Okay.
And then it will come to the eyes. The whitish becomes yellowish.
Okay.
From the face, it will go to the neck, to the abdomen, to the thighs, and then to go to the extremities, which is the legs, and then also to the hands.
Okay.
When that happens, the baby might not be able to suck properly. The activity of the baby will reduce. The baby will be sleepy. The mothers will tell you, my baby has been sleeping a lot, will not be awakened so easily. The baby might be crying, nothing will console the baby. And then there might be fever too. So when you see that, you have to bring the baby to us.
Okay.
Don't wait and say, as for this one, there to go, as our grandmothers would say. Just in the morning, just put the baby in the lights, and then the sun, the baby will be fine. You have to bring the baby to us. Let us assess the baby, take the blood sample, and then let us know whether you can go home with the baby.
Oh, no.
It is safe for you to go home with the baby and then use your sunlight coat, which is not advisable, or the baby has to be put under the lights, so that the jaundice will go away safely before you take the baby home.
Okay. So I think one of the important things or points that she made is the fact that you cannot identify the jaundice in darkness, right? Yes. So there has to be light put on the child. And then she speaks about all the signs that they have to look out for, and then the baby must be rushed to the hospital. So Doc, if you would let us know, She mentioned something of interest, which is the fact that the baby may be crying, have a fever. And I actually thought until then that jaundice would have been like just a quiet kind of thing, like after just seeing like a palish skin, and that ends it. So what are, beyond the physical assessment that she spoke about, what are some of the signs that will show that a child may be suffering from jaundice?
All right, so beyond noticing the yellowing, some of the other things that may happen, which she mentioned some of, would be that the baby may not be sucking on the breast well. And so babies who sleep for too long, we averagely expect a baby to sleep between 2 to 3 hours after feeding. And then they will usually cry to indicate that they are hungry again to feed. So if your baby is sleeping beyond 3 hours consistently and so dull, you would be worried, all right? And then a baby also who cries so much, you are trying to feed and the baby is not consoled, you're walking around, the baby is not consoled, you should be worried and bring the child, especially when you've also noticed yellowing alongside that. And babies, as the yellowing gets worse, these symptoms will progress. So you would begin to see babies stretching. I know mothers sometimes have a bit of concern about my baby stretches. There's a different kind of stretch where you see the limbs becoming very straight, the arms becoming very straight, the legs also becoming very straight. It's different from when the tummy is rumbling.
Oh, so what you just described is a danger sign.
Very, very bad danger sign. You don't want it to get there. All right. You don't want it to get there. The moment
so they're just stretching like babies do, but this time it's like in a very...
You would see that it's unusual.
Okay.
A baby goes about that. Most of the time when they stretch, they bring their hands back up and they are very quick to, and they kick legs and all that. But then the baby begins to look rhythmic in the movements. You should be very worried. And hopefully no baby gets there before you bring them to hospital, because it's a sign that the yellowing has progressed into the brain. And that's one of the key things we do not want to happen when the baby has jaundice.
Okay. She speaks about progress, like, you know, the yellowing and all that, which shows that there are levels to the jaundice. So we could, like, I would have assumed if it's malaria, we have malaria. Does that mean that we have a low level of jaundice, a high, mid-level? Is there a differentiation?
All right. So, like Dr. Konedu mentioned earlier, jaundice is simply the breakdown, happens because of the breakdown of the red blood cells. Now, you may have just a small quantity of red blood cells breaking down, and therefore the overload of the yellowish pigment in the body isn't so much. However, you may have the breakdown being so massive that, and the body not being able to control or undertake all this breakdown because of the immaturity of the organs of the body, like the liver. So yes, there are levels. So you may have what is mild jaundice, which may not necessarily need intervention or any form of treatment. And that's why we keep saying, bring to hospital, let us run labs, let's see how bad your jaundice is, and then we can tell the treatment. You may have, so we have nomograms or charts that we use to determine your level of jaundice after we have run labs to determine the number or the level of the bilirubin. So below a certain level, we would not do anything about it. We can reassure you and tell you to continue breastfeeding because breast milk has a lot of benefits for babies and helps with jaundice. I hope we'll get into that some more. And you may also have the point where it gets to a range where we could use light in the treatment. There are also times where the levels are so high, light treatment alone cannot help solve the problem, and so we would resort to blood transfusion. And this is a type of what we call an exchange blood transfusion. So we take out part of the baby's blood and infuse fresh blood that does not have the yellow pigmentation into baby, so that baby gets cleared of the jaundice.
Okay. So when you were talking about all the levels that could be, it comes to emphasize on the fact that parents or mothers cannot stay at home with their children because they are unable to determine the level at which the jaundice is.
Exactly.
And so they cannot just determine that go and be under the sun.
Exactly.
But just so our viewers will know, what is the actual danger of just like fixing the child under the sun? Because I'm sure people are listening, they are saying, well, you put them under the light anyway, and if I'm doing the natural one, what is wrong with it?
So, I mean, the light that we use in hospital is a concentrated form of a particular wavelength of light, which can break the bilirubin down such that the body can absorb it and get rid of it.
Bilirubin means?
The yellow pigmentation.
Okay, so we'll stick to the, the yellow pigmentation.
So the yellow pigmentation, it can break it down and at a good rate, such that it doesn't build up to a level that will cause problems for the baby. All right, but when you put the baby out in the sun's rays have several wavelengths of light, and it's not concentrated for that particular wavelength of light. You won't have that concentration to be able to break down the yellow pigmentation at a good rate where it can be excreted or removed from the body and then help the baby to recover. Now, the big danger here, which I mentioned earlier on, is that with the babies, there is a protective layer that all people have, which matures as you are born, Babies would usually not have the protective layer in the first few days of life, and that protective layer is called the blood-brain barrier. It's a mouthful. All right, so because that protective layer is not formed, the yellowing can easily cross into the brain and start causing brain damage, which can cause long-term complications. So we do not want the yellowing to stick around for a long time. And sometimes, even in hospital, we misinterpret the pigmentation to say, this is not too bad. Let's wait and see the results. And it comes out, you're like, that's so high, all right? And then sometimes you think the baby is so yellow, then the results come and you're like, oh, it's not so bad. So you can't really interpret so much from the skin, all right? So it's very good for them to come to hospital and let's intervene as early as we can.
Let me be quick to add that I guess there are different shades of colors here.
I was just going to, you read my mind, that was going to be my question,
So some of us are black beauties.
Yeah, I was going to say, how can you, be more difficult for the dark babies, to tell?
Exactly, and so that's why we recommend that come to hospital. Because for us as health professionals who have been in the job for a long time, we still sometimes wait and then say, let me err on the side of caution, because you know that you can never be too sure just with your eyes. And thank God for technology. Thank God for science. And that's why we do the lab investigations.
All right. So we are going to talk about breastfeeding and the impact it has, whether it influences the newborn jaundice, So it gets a little bit difficult to understand that a newborn, a baby just came out, and then within some few hours, you are being told that the baby has jaundice. And usually, we try to breastfeed the children once they come out. Is there an impact of breastfeeding, on the newborn jaundice?
Yes. What happens is normally when mothers do give birth, during the first 3 days, they are not able to lactate properly. So when this happens, meaning the baby will not get enough breast milk, which means the baby will not get enough nutrition. So the baby might tend to be hydrated because the baby is not feeding much from from the mother's breast milk. So when that happens, the baby becomes dehydrated, which can also cause the jaundice.
So assuming that a baby is dehydrated because they're not able to, lactate once they come out, and so this is the cause of a jaundice, I will assume that this will not be a very severe kind of jaundice, or does this, because once the mother begins to, or sometimes some hospitals would opt for some formula.
So I don't want you to get into formula.
I don't want to, but I'm just imagining that, the baby is born in 3 days, the mother is unable to produce any breast milk. I mean, the baby is on the breast and the breast milk is not coming.
It will come.
It will come, but you have determined newborn jaundice.
Yes.
So what happens?
All right, so that is why as clinicians, we encourage for early initiation of breastfeeding. We have observed that when babies are put to breast early, it helps kickstart lactation early enough for baby. So we realize that a lot of it's a said, people say they don't like cesarean sections because cesarean section you can't breastfeed, blah, 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 blah.
Is that true or is it a myth?
It is a myth. In fact, I have had babies through cesarean section, and I can say proudly that I started lactating first day. So now what we do is, even right in theater, once surgery is done, they can put baby over you and then get baby to begin to initiate breastfeeding. And it has proven to help kickstart breastfeeding much earlier than when babies are nursed in a separate room from mothers. So that is one of the things that we try to do to prevent dehydration, which will then cause what we call physiological jaundice. So even though physiological, which is physiology has to do with the natural behavior of the body, the natural action of the body. Yes, but even though physiological jaundice tends to be relatively lower, we do know that in a few cases it can go quite high and would require therapy or treatment. And these ones, fortunately, are not so high, and so yes, light therapy is usually enough for them. But yes, breast milk is such a key role in preventing newborn jaundice and severe forms of newborn jaundice. So yes, early initiation and continuous breastfeeding helps.
I just want to add that the concern about lactation is most of the times our perception, because once you put the baby there and the baby is sucking, something drops in the baby's mouth and the baby is quite satisfied being there. So mothers are expecting to see some milk pouring out, and they are so upset and so concerned that I'm not lactating, and because they don't think they are seeing much when they squeeze. And sometimes actually with all that concern, when you go and squeeze, you see trickles, you're like, wow, you are lactating. So continue putting that baby to the breast, and we are very, very concerned about initiating breastfeeding very early.
So this question is to any of you can answer. The risk factors. Can any child get jaundice? Or there are a group of children that have a higher risk of getting newborn jaundice?
Okay, so we know that as many as 60% of babies who go through the whole 9 months of pregnancy will get jaundice. That means 6 out of 10 babies who are actually born at the 9th month will get jaundice.
That's high.
Yeah. And this usually is because of the physiological jaundice and then other causes. But then there's a group that are more likely to have jaundice, and that's the preterms. The more preterm you are, the higher your risk for neonatal jaundice. So we say that a baby who is born, say, at 32 weeks is more likely to be jaundiced than a baby who is born at, say, 35 or 36 weeks of life, even though all of them are preterm. And as many as 8 out of 10 preterms will get jaundice. So that is an age group that has more jaundice. Then we have other causes of jaundice. So we know that, for instance, infants of diabetic mothers tend to suffer jaundice a great deal, more than other babies. We also know that sometimes because of blood group differences between mother and baby, the baby may also have jaundice. For instance, we know that when mothers have negative blood types and their babies have positive blood types, there may be some interaction and the babies may have jaundice. Also, mothers of some blood groups tend to have jaundice more than other babies, other mothers would see in their babies. So those are some of the risk factors that we have.
So we also have, just as Dr. Abonodi has said, some of the causes have been listed, but then we also have people who are prone to infections. During the pregnancy, some mothers may have had an infection, maybe mild, not properly treated, or treated but not completely resolved. Such mothers are likely to have their kids with infections when they are delivered. And so in the first few hours of life, you begin to see that the baby is expressing. Maybe the only sign of the infection would be the jaundice. And then we also have, as Madam Juliet mentioned, an enzyme deficiency called the G6PD.
Okay.
That some people have that you can pass on to your child.
That's during pregnancy.
Well, in general, some
Okay.
people have that enzyme deficiency.
Okay.
They grow up and they still have it. Well, so those who have this are unlikely to, the red cells are unlikely to withstand certain forms of stress.
Okay.
And the delivery is some kind of stress for the baby. And so if the baby is born with this enzyme deficiency, they are likely to also have jaundice early on in life.
Okay.
Let me be quick to add on that one of the interesting things about G6PD deficiency is the use of camphor.
Oh, the white...
Exactly,
balls.
naphthalene balls,
Yeah.
which we put...
To come and deliver.
Yes.
They do what?
They put in their things to come and deliver.
What's the reason?
They say it takes away bad smell
Odor.
and cockroaches and what have
Even
you.
when they are coming to deliver their
They bring-
babies.
yes,
So,
they come with them.
So we know that naphthalene balls causes the breakdown of the red blood cells that we are talking about in
I'm
babies
happy
who
that
have-
you are
When they
mentioning
inhale it-
this.
When they inhale it. when the
Wow.
babies
So you
inhale
could be the weapon formed against yourself and your baby.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we say wash all clothes, including new clothes that you buy from the
Yeah,
shops.
yeah.
Because you never know. The shop
tear
owner
rubbers,
may
wash
not
them
know,
before you bring them.
may actually be keeping naphthalene balls in the clothes. And sometimes this is what causes jaundice in the babies.
But you know, they always talk about washing newborn clothing, even the ones that, you know, are so new, not the
Packaged.
second hand.
Yeah.
But it's never been explained the why.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we usually just take it like you probably feel it's not hygienic or
Yeah.
something, but it's never been linked to...
Okay, so this is a
Yeah,
reason
this is
why,
a reason.
why we should wash them. And please, mothers, don't feel bad that you are not coming with clothes and rubbers. We know that you love your babies and you would buy the best for baby. But let us wash them so that we can get rid of some of these things.
Okay.
And iron them if possible.
Iron them if possible, yeah. So we'll be going on a break very soon. But before we go, I want us to touch on the worst case scenario of a newborn, a baby who has a newborn jaundice. What happens? What is likely to happen to this baby? The worst case scenario.
All right. So, I mean, based on the cause of the jaundice, where you have the red cells breaking down, one of the major things that can happen is the yellowing crossing into the brain, as we mentioned, and that can cause brain damage, which could lead, depending on the severity of the brain damage, it can lead to some hearing impairment long-term, visual impairments long-term, and unfortunately, some causes of cerebral palsy could also be related to jaundice. Okay, and we all know the long-term effects and the need for support for people with cerebral palsy and the difficulties that sometimes they have depending on the severity as well. So it's best that we keep some of these things. Also, if the red cells are breaking down, you could lose so much red cells and the baby becomes anemic. And the anemia, which is the low hemoglobin, all right, can lead to further organ damage, like your heart, your kidneys, and other vital organs. So it's a big deal, and that's why we want to discuss and make everybody aware that don't just take it lightly. You may have had a child who had jaundice before, probably mild. You thought putting the child near the sun was good enough, but don't think that that's the treatment for it all the time. Please come to hospital and let's say this is good enough to go home, or let's look into it further.
Good. Let's talk numbers shortly before we go on the break. So we have 10 children. I just want to see the cases in Ghana, how many children actually die from newborn jaundice. So if you have 10 children, in our case in Ghana, how many of them actually get to that stage where they've been brought to the hospital, but it's so severe that they actually,
All right, so we have challenges with statistics as a country.
Okay.
And so it will be difficult for us to give you the numbers that are dying. But what we do know is that at least 6 out of 10 babies would suffer, who are born term or who have gone through the 9 months will suffer jaundice. And then 8 out of the preterms would suffer neonatal jaundice. Now, the severe ones depend usually on where baby is born. So in instances where there's more noise about it, people know more about it, they tend to come in early and we catch them early. In fact, sometimes they come and we say the levels are low. You do not need to worry. Come back, let us check again in another 48 hours and make sure that levels are going down further. However, in hard to reach areas and even in Accra sometimes because of lack of knowledge, we do have people coming in with severe forms that require blood transfusion. And unfortunately, even though we do blood transfusions for these children, for some of them, like Dr. Konedu mentioned, they already have brain damage, and so we monitor these ones, and unfortunately you will pick up some of the complications like the hearing loss, the motor problems, which is the cerebral palsy, in them at least by the time that they are a year old. And that is what we want to cut down on.
Okay. So viewers, it's getting interesting here. I just want to remind you that we are still live on all our social media platforms, on both Facebook and YouTube. We would love to read your comments. And I'm sure there are a number of you who are watching who have experiences with newborn jaundice. Kindly send in your comments, send in your questions. WhatsApp us on 0501 579996. We'll be right back.
With the growing challenges of life in light of both global and domestic development, the Christian is faced with the difficult task of balancing survival within a secular system and at the same time living a Christian life that pleases their Maker. It is for this reason that we need to have frank conversations on the many issues of life through the Christian lens. So, we bring to you Let's Talk About. On Let's Talk About, we talk about health, career, dating, marriage, family, divorce, politics, finance, and all the issues of life that the Christian is confronted with on a daily basis. Join us this and every Wednesday on the YouTube and Facebook pages of Trinity United Church Legon, and let's talk about life as Christians. With the growing challenges of life in light of both global and domestic development, the Christian is faced with the difficult task of balancing survival within a secular system and at the same time living a Christian life that pleases their Maker. It is for this reason that we need to have frank conversations on the many issues of life through the Christian lens. So, we bring to you Let's Talk About. On Let's Talk About, we talk about health, career, dating, marriage, family, divorce, politics, finance, and all the issues of life that the Christian is confronted with on a daily basis. Join us this and every Wednesday on the YouTube and Facebook pages of Trinity United Church Legon, and let's talk about life as Christians. With the growing challenges of life in light of both global and domestic development, the Christian is faced with the difficult task of balancing survival within a secular system and at the same time living a Christian life that pleases their Maker. It is for this reason that we need to have frank conversations on the many issues of life through the Christian lens. So, we bring to you Let's Talk About. On Let's Talk About, we talk about health, career, dating, marriage, family, divorce, politics, finance, and all the issues of life that the Christian is confronted with on a daily basis. Join us this and every Wednesday on the YouTube and Facebook pages of Trinity United Church Legon, and let's talk about life as Christians.
Welcome back, viewers. Let me remind you that we are still live on YouTube and Facebook. Don't forget to send us your comments and your questions. And you can also send us WhatsApp on 0501 579996. We would love to read your comment. We are still here with Dr. Ejewa Bonwidie, pediatrician specialist, Dr. Josephine Kunedu, who is a medical officer, and Mrs. Juliet Menu, who is a senior nursing officer, all of the University of Ghana Hospital. Welcome back.
Thank you.
So I was just thinking during the break, I had a colleague who had a child, and from the way you were talking, especially about the stretching, it occurred to me that it's most likely that the child may have actually had a newborn jaundice. So they speak about the child was sleeping a lot.
Okay.
And they assumed that the child was just sleeping. After, it was a day, they saw the child, and then they assumed it was a spiritual something, because the child was not as active as the child should be. Instead of them taking the child to the hospital, they took the child to one of the native doctor to do something. I don't quite remember, because I think they are Muslims. I don't know what they did, but he mentioned that they took the child to do something, stretch the child, and and they got back home. The child was sleeping, and then at dawn, when the wife woke up to breastfeed the child, actually they were twins, so realized that that particular child had passed on.
Too bad.
And it was just, if you ask, all he could say was he was sleeping and he was not eating, his dull. But instead of running to the hospital, the first thing that they thought of was to take to a native doctor. I don't know what it is, but that comes to the myth that surrounds even just newborns. Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in the tree language, there's something they typically call asram. And they will tell you that...
I think he probably mentioned something similar to this.
They'll tell you it is an evil eye that has looked at baby, and that causes harm to baby. And so anything that makes baby unwell is termed asram. And it is termed a problem that has to be solved by the spiritualist and not in hospital. But we do know that one of the causes of newborn jaundice is infections. And infections can cause babies not to feed properly, to sleep a lot, to become inactive. And so that could be what may have happened in this baby. It is also possible that this baby could have had the yellowing of the eyes and the body, but then because usually in our traditional settings, babies are not brought out until they are a week old, and then they are outdoored. They are kept indoors in the dark, curtains drawn. Remember, Juliet mentioned that
you have to open.
Draw the curtains, let sunlight stream into the room so you can view babies well. So because these babies are kept indoors, nobody knows exactly what is happening. Babies don't open their eyes often when they are in the first month until much later. And so we don't even get to see their eyes. And that is why Juliet mentioned that you need to press the face and leave and see whether you would find the yellow pigmentation happening. So yes, asram is one of the greatest myths that affects us severely in hospital. And it is pathetic to see when they come in the late stages, when you could have actually done so much if they came in early. And so that is why we're sending these words round. If you see your baby sleeping a lot, not feeding well, and so on, it is not just the spiritual things. Let us deal with the physical things that we can deal with whilst we battle the rest in prayer and what have you.
Okay, are there any other myths, like, when it comes to newborn
So there are
jaundice?
some cultural practices relating to early newborns that can also negatively affect the management of jaundice and can lead to complications. So sometimes you hear about putting breast milk in the eye of the baby who has jaundice.
And that would be because the color of the eye
has become a bit yellow, and they notice that it's yellow. And so the breast milk is said to clear the eye, and we know very well that it doesn't. And so we've had some cases of the breast milk with, however they collect it and put it in the baby's eye will be introducing infections, all right? And then also the jaundice is not going to clear from dropping the...
What if it's direct? So like they put the...
breast,
I'm just trying
really,
to eliminate the idea of infection.
Exactly.
So what if some people breastfeeding, they splash. So what if they are just splashing directly from source onto the eye?
How the body works is that if something doesn't belong somewhere, you put it there, it becomes a source of infection. So bacteria can easily settle on it and then cause something more than it would have if it wasn't in a place where it shouldn't be. All right, so that's one thing that can happen. There are also some cultural practices where I hope it's, with all the advocacy that's going on, these things have reduced. But then you hear about putting cow dung on the navel, which can also cause infections. Wow. And with that astrum that has been mentioned, sometimes they try to prevent it. They tie all kinds of rags with hideous things inside those rags to help to ward off evil spirits, and these can also become a source of infection. You know, babies are moving their hands everywhere. That cord is so fresh, and you are putting all these things on the baby. The skin is also quite easy to permeate when they are fresh, and so a lot of these things become problems for the baby.
We have a question here by Daniel. Can a baby get jaundice when feeding it with only formula from the day he or she is born till a stage of maturity where he or she can eat different kinds of food? So basically trying to ask that I had a child and immediately I'm feeding the child with formula, so there's no period of dehydration up to when they go on solids. Can a child get newborn jaundice?
Most definitely.
Oh.
Because like we have said, there are various reasons why a baby may have jaundice. So yes, you may be feeding your baby formula, but then your baby could have G6PD deficiency. Your baby could have been exposed to camphor. Your baby could have an infection, which could cause the jaundice. Or your baby's blood group may not match with mother's blood group, and that is what may be causing jaundice in your baby's life. Or even your baby could have a surgical condition, like I mentioned earlier, which is causing the jaundice in this baby's life. So a lot of things can cause the jaundice, not necessarily the type of feed or it being breast milk or not breast milk. Having said that, I must say that even though formula is being improved on day by day, God in his own wisdom gave us breast milk to feed to our babies. And so breast milk we know is best for baby. Formula, even though it may be close to breast milk, does not even have the immunoglobulins or sort of protection that breast milk has against infections and diseases. And so, yes, you may be feeding your baby formula, but that may not be the best for baby.
So they should try for breast milk.
Exactly.
Economically, it's the best, actually.
Definitely. Definitely.
It's cheap, it's safe, no problems with contamination and diarrheal diseases.
So by all means, if they can, because I think they have people who genuinely cannot.
Yes, so we would advocate for breastfeeding any day, any time. But yes, there are certain rare instances where breastfeeding is not possible, and that is when we want to resort to formula feed.
Okay, so I have a question from our Reverend Minister, Reverend Dr. Martin Obeng. He said, thanks for the insights, excellent presentation by guests. What role can fathers also play?
I love the one, especially since we have just celebrated Father's Day. I want to talk about support. When mothers deliver, it is a period where they are usually at their lowest end. They feel so depressed, dejected. It's like sometimes they feel inadequate. Whatever they do, they feel it is not enough. And that is where we need fathers to support, to encourage mothers to continue, to keep going. For instance, mother is crying, I'm not lactating, and they are in tears. as they go in tears, the lactation even decreases further.
Yeah.
So a supportive man rubbing his arms around mother, rubbing the back.
I hope they are listening.
Rubbing the back, preparing soup for his wife, bringing her a cup of Milo to drink, some fresh
with
fruits
a lot of milk in it.
with a lot of milk. Juliet says we should do a saute. Yes, getting her some fruits, a lot of water to drink. These are things that fathers can do to support. Also, we realize in a setting, it's the men who have the money. So mother has realized that baby is not doing too well. She wants to go to the hospital and she's waiting for father.
Yeah.
So we need fathers to support, to help us bring in babies early before the situation becomes too serious to solve. I also want at this point to entreat all people to at least have a national health insurance, which would open them to at least solicit health care in most of our public facilities and at least some of our private facilities as well. So fathers should go ahead and then do the health insurance for mothers so that their babies are covered when they deliver.
Okay. So, Madam Juliet, I haven't forgotten about you. So, I want you to talk about, you know, when the mothers finish giving birth and they are about to leave the hospital. Do you educate them? What do you tell them? Because within the 48, 72 hours, maybe the test did not show anything. How do you go about ensuring that these mothers and fathers who are taking their children home are able to comfortably, you know, all that is involved, especially with newborn jaundice? Is it something that is done? Do you talk about it? Go look out for this. Is it something that you advocate while the mothers are leaving the hospital?
Yes. Our facility, what we normally do is our doctors go to our maternity ward before they are being discharged.
Okay.
We look out for jaundice and then look out for so many other things. Examine them from head to toe to see if everything is fine. When everything is fine, we educate them on the signs of jaundice. As Dr. Buenedi said, when you go home, don't just go home and then lock all windows since 1 week is not yet in for baby to be outdoors. Look out for signs, as I said, from head to toe. Every day, from morning, evening, every morning and every evening, just look out for signs of jaundice. I earlier on said that pinch your baby's face, forehead, and then see if it's jaundice. And then look out for the eyes, the white patches in her eyes.
So by pinching here, and you take off what would you see?
Pinch and then you release. You see some yellowish pigmentations there if it's really jaundice.
Okay.
And then look at their eyes too. Try as much as possible to look at the baby's eye, but most babies do close their eyes a lot.
Okay.
But you bringing the baby out of the room to natural sunlight, you by all means see the baby will gradually open the eyes because of the sun. And then you just from head to toe, from the chest to the abdomen, to the thighs, and then to the legs and then arms. Definitely you by all means see something. And then if there is fever, we normally encourage mothers when they are pregnant to get thermometers so that they'll be using it. Just using your hand on the forehead of the baby, you might not see anything. And then other mothers to overwrap our babies. We don't have to overwrap.
Yes.
Come like some shawarma.
With heads on,
hair caps on.
In this our weather.
And then they are wearing overalls.
Mittens.
Too much.
Yeah,
And
the
then
mittens. Where
overwrap
did we get that from? Maybe
We're
the doctors
learning
want
everything from outside.
Really? I thought they actually would say that the child to prevent the child from getting the cold. Because it becomes normal. We swaddle the kids.
No,
like,
we always encourage our mothers to dress our babies according to the weather.
the weather.
Exactly.
Hot weather, a baby is in the room
Wool.
with a lot of. It's too much. It's too much for our babies.
Okay. So you see, what all that you said about detecting the yellowish patch and all that will work well for colored, lighter skinned babies. So tell us, if I have a darker skinned baby, if I touch, I'm not sure I will see any yellow patches.
Interestingly,
So what should I, or it shows?
Interestingly, it peels out a bit when you press.
But it's more difficult.
Well,
So
you...
fortunately, within the first week of life, it should be quite easy for you to see. When you just press for a couple of seconds and then release, and you would realize that if there is no jaundice, it should come out whitish. However, if there's jaundice, instead of the whitish discoloration, you see a yellowish discoloration, and that tells you that there is jaundice.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And then even if the baby is dark colored, the eyes will really show, because we all have
white eyes.
white eyes. All of us. So you by all means see it. If only you bring your baby out of the room, not closing your windows, bring the baby out, you by all means see something.
Okay.
The level of your baby's activeness will also reduce. The way he or she sucks the breast will even reduce. The baby will sleep a lot, will not even pinching the baby, just tapping the baby to encourage the baby to breastfeed. The baby will not
When they're
even,
breastfeeding,
yes, you
slaying
have
it
to
to sleep,
encourage them.
you do
Yes,
something
you have to
so they
encourage
continue.
them to continue to
So they will not
breastfeed.
respond?
They will not even respond. They'll just be sleeping. The baby will be crying. You even, no matter what you do, this baby cannot be consoled. You have to bring the baby to
The
us.
hospital. Okay.
Just bring the baby to us.
All right. Let's talk about phototherapy.
Okay.
Anytime we go to, actually before that, choosing a birthing center or a birthing place. I know there are a lot of private hospitals and I don't know if the government hospitals, but is it by law compulsory for all health centers to have this phototherapy machine? Why am I asking that? Because if from what we have discussed so far, we are seeing the importance of actually checking for this newborn jaundice, right? And so I'm imagining that I'm in a health facility and they did the tests, maybe there's I don't know if there's a blood test or something, and they realized that the child has a high level of newborn jaundice. Are they now going to be transferring that baby from the health facility to another? And so I want you to give a word as a pediatrician to mothers, because sometimes people will go to a particular hospital. When it comes to birthing, what do you think they should watch out for from a facility where they will confidently go and say they are going to have their babies?
Please let me chip in something.
Okay, good.
During antenatal, it's when the mother is about to deliver, we encourage them to choose a place they will want to go and deliver.
Exactly.
So that they will prepare towards the delivery. So that when labor sets in, you now don't be wondering
where can I go
where
to?
should go and then where, yes. And then the amount you even pay, whether the facility takes that insurance, if they don't take, if I deliver by myself, how much I'll pay. And then there's something we say that labor has, how will I even put it? You cannot say, yes, when you are pregnant, you don't know whether you deliver by cesarean section or by yourself. It's only when the baby will arrive.
You would say what you want to, but you know, the D-Day.
You only know the mode of delivery
body,
when the
exactly.
baby is out. So you should know exactly where
Which
you are
you
going
want
to
to.
deliver. So you discuss with your husband so that you know if your husband can afford a bigger facility whereby you have this AC, everything, and whereby you
Very
pay
important.
so much. It's
No
very
shocks.
important,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
before the D-Day.
Okay.
All right. I also want to add that it's one of the things that Pediatric Society of Ghana, which is a body that sees, that advocates for child health, has been trying to drive over the last few years. And that is why we started celebrating this neonatal Jaundice Awareness Month. So one of it is to do advocacy, to let people know about what causes jaundice and how they can prevent jaundice, how they can prevent disability and death of their babies from jaundice, but also how we can advocate for health facilities to be equipped adequately with phototherapy units and even bilirubinometers, which is what we use to check the level of yellowness in a body, in the body of a baby. So yes, we are advocating. We want people to donate to health facilities that are close to them, health facilities that they visit, because you never know when it is going to be your child or your brother's child or your friend's child who would suffer from severe jaundice and its consequences. So yes, we advocate that all facilities should be equipped, but unfortunately, most of our facilities are not equipped. The other good thing is that for us as people taking care of children, we've tried to establish some network amongst ourselves. And so if a baby is in one facility and is suffering from neonatal jaundice, yes, we can liaise with other facilities who have the equipment and then refer baby to go there and have treatment. And so it is quite easy once you walk into your health facility and then complain.
Great. We have another, okay,
it's
let me take your comment
it's a good time
before the
to
question.
chip in that we are here also because of the general support of your church to our department. They have come to give us some things in our children's unit. Exactly. And then it's gone a long way to help how we manage the children on our wards. And thank you very much.
Thank you too. Yes. So our Reverend Minister is still on, and his question is, what about the children in a home where the baby is born into? How do we educate them about situations of the newborn?
A home? Do you mean like...
I assume in the house, like, you know, delivered.
At
so
home.
I have other children who are in the house. I think that's it. How do we educate the children also about the state of the newborn? So I would probably twist this question because in our society, when we give birth, it's not just you that takes care of the child. So I would amplify this question by saying that in the home, entire home, we educate the mothers, but maybe the grandmom is there, auntie is there, the housekeeper is there, mommy is gone to work. How are we able to, you know, ensure that these other people who form part of the newborn's, you know, first few days of life are also educated about the jaundice, so that if mommy does not see it, even the little child can be able to say that baby is yellowish, or, you know.
So our support systems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
you want to take it?
We include the families and other support givers of the mothers when they are being discharged. Usually we'll have a little talk with the mother and who's going to be the primary support giver, and the father as well. And we make them aware of a lot of things that they need to look out for and a lot of precautions that they need to take. And then also with the month awareness programs that we've been doing, several health facilities, other health personnel go around their communities. We visited Okponglo during the Jaundice month as well to speak to the local people there. So we engage everyone.
So it's more of advocacy.
Exactly. We do that a lot. And even when they come for health visits, when it's probably a few days after delivery, and most of the times you have the grandmothers who were not initially in hospital coming with them, we take the opportunity to educate everyone at that point.
Okay. I have a final question, but before that, this is an interesting one from Festus Amwako. Please, does it mean that DB babies are likely to have jaundice because they are less exposed to sunlight and also they breastfeed less? We don't have statistics, right? We don't want to blame any that babies. But is that, yeah.
Interestingly, you will probably have those you are calling DB who are more informed, coming early to hospital when the child has the slightest tinge of jaundice than those who you think are exposing, their children to the sunlight because they think they know so much about traditional practices and they won't want to change their mindset at that point.
Okay. So before I take your final comments, right, you know, phototherapy, that whole machine, sometimes when mothers, you know, everybody gives birth to their children, they want to keep their children by themselves. And then you do the test and they say, we have to take your child away. It's a very emotional period for most mothers. And that whole machine, there's a myth about the machine, you know, with the sunlight and the color that is all inside there. I want you to demystify the phototherapy process. Does it harm the baby? Is it hot in there? Can mommy go to sleep knowing that the child is okay? You know, is it like chemotherapy. Yeah, because people, you know, once they see that light, they're already in distress.
Yeah.
Can mommy continue breastfeeding the child? Can mommy still visit? How long? Like, you know, just to demystify it and people not to feel all this apprehension when they have to take their children. Because you'll be surprised, it's one of the reasons why they would rather stay at home and put the child under sunshine. Apart from that, you also add if it's economical. Is it costly? So that I don't sit and go like, so a colleague just mentioned that the child stayed for 1 month. Doesn't matter how long the child is staying. So a mother listening will not say, I'm not taking my child, I'd rather do the natural sunshine my grandmom taught me because I don't have money to pay for it.
All right, so first of all, I want to say that phototherapy is very friendly to babies and to mothers. What we do know is that too much of the light or the light can be harmful to the eyes and to your genitals. And so for every baby that we put under phototherapy, we cover their eyes to protect their eyes.
Okay.
And then we also make sure that they are always in diapers to protect their genitals. So we do take into consideration that, yes, there are some risks, but then we are careful enough to take measures to mitigate those risks. As to babies in phototherapy, in fact, if we were to be endowed with enough phototherapy machines, phototherapy will be done at the maternity ward, where mother is still on the ward and baby is by her bedside under the photo machine. And when baby cries and is hungry, mother just carries baby and feeds. That is what we wish would happen. Unfortunately, because we do not have enough of these machines, we keep them in the pediatric unit, and unfortunately that is where we have to separate babies and mothers. But as much as possible, we would advocate that even the maternity units have phototherapy machines so that babies are not separated from mother. When babies are separated, we do not prevent mothers from coming in. In fact, one of the things I keep telling the mothers is when you come and your baby is crying, console them, stroke them, sing to them, speak to them, let them feel your presence around them. Okay. And yes, we do have breaks where mothers come, take baby out of phototherapy and breastfeed. You know, we have said that breast milk helps a lot with shortening the duration and the level of jaundice. So we do advocate for continuous breastfeeding whilst baby is under phototherapy. Then coming to the second one that you asked. I'm sorry, I forgot to.
It had to do with cost.
It had to do with cost, exactly. So early detection, early treatment prevents a lifetime of disability and death. I mean, I guess any mother having gone through 9 months of pregnancy and labor to bring forth a baby would want to see their babies alive and well, and would not want to have a baby who cannot speak because they cannot hear, or baby who cannot see because had severe forms of jaundice, or a baby who cannot move and you have to carry baby throughout your lifetime. And so there is no cost that can be compared to these. But I must say that phototherapy is not that expensive, even where we need to do blood transfusions for babies. It is not so expensive. For facilities that take health insurance, most of these procedures are covered by health insurance. And so apart from a few processes or tests that you may need to pay for, mothers can actually walk away with paying very little for neonatal jaundice.
Any closing remarks?
Well, so we are very happy that you gave us time to come and have this discussion. And as we mentioned, it's very important that we keep this conversation going. We hope that those who have listened to us will carry it on. Let's be each other's keepers in our families and in our communities. So spread the word about neonatal jaundice.
Okay, Ines, do you have anything? Last words for our mothers, fathers?
I only say that mothers should come in early, bring our babies early to us for early detection and early treatment to prevent permanent brain damage of our babies.
Great. All right, so all too soon we have come to the end of today's edition of Let's Talk About. We have been joined by Dr. Ejewa, we also had Dr. Josephine, and we had Mrs. Juliet Menu, a senior nursing officer, all from the University of Ghana Hospital. I am Edinam Ejesica, and I have been your host for today. See you same time next week, and be an advocate for newborn jaundice.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much.